Okay, in this week's lectures, there's going to be a series of 10 or 11 different lectures going through some of the different artwork. We will be looking quite extensively at each particular piece of art and talking about why it was either considered obscene or banned in the past. When we first started the course, we did look at some art, and you saw different European art, specifically Roman and Greek art, and that was before we had a chance to look at a definition of obscenity that we've now developed since the 1970s. So looking back at this, we can start looking at, imagine that, let's say the Cummer Museum of Art in Jacksonville wanted to move this particular piece of art, Goat and Satyr, to the Cummer. First thing that they are going to look at now is the Miller test for obscenity. So we are going to go back to it, even though last week I asked you to kind of look beyond that, because music and music videos are bringing in such new ideas that we now have to look at violence and other issues. But here we're going to go back to our Miller test. Does it appeal to prurient interest? Is it patently offensive? And does it have redeeming value? So notice, first of all, even in the European context, this particular sculpture from Pompeii, so dating back a long time, is in the Naples Archaeological Museum, and it is in what is called the secret room. So they put it aside because it is a very, how should we say, upfront sculpture. It shows quite a bit. So looking at this, I have a note at the bottom, one of the first artifacts discovered during excavations of Pompeii. So this, we know, was on display somewhere in Pompeii. And so looking at it nowadays, we can say, does this go to prurient interest? So it's a sexual scene. Is it patently offensive? Normally we consider bestiality to be offensive. Does it lack redeeming value? And that's where we're going to see that most pieces of art today are saved from being defined as or categorized as obscene, because it is artwork and it does have redeeming value. So looking at this, and you can look through the discussion board to talk about some of this, what redeeming value is there? And that's kind of for you to start discussing and looking. But we know, just first of all, from its antiquity, how old it is, that there is some value to it, historically, archaeologically, as well as artistically. What is the purpose of it? Who's to say? We could say that there is possibly fertility issues, that this is showing the gods fertilizing the animals, the beast, because we see the horned beast. And remember, at this point they probably were not fully Christian, so we don't have to see this as the devil. This really would be seen as Pan or some kind of wood god, so bringing fertility to the different animals. Second one, again from Pompeii, and this is still in the secret room. Here we have another view of Pan, the same one as before. Obviously this time we see him with a female, and so again, looking at, does this appeal to the prurient interest? Well, we see two nude figures, Pan with a full erection. Is it patently offensive? Again, that's up for grabs for either a judge or a jury to decide whether this would be patently offensive if we tried to display this in the Cummer. And does it lack redeeming value? Again, we would probably say that there is some value to the mosaic just because of how old it is, and looking at it in the larger picture, not from a Christian viewpoint, but looking at it from an artistic viewpoint, it probably does have redeeming value. Whereas the previous picture was showing Pan and fertility issues with animals, we see here with a woman. Again, a lot of different interpretations here. Is the woman harnessed? Is she tied up? Is she representing a tree? Is she representing nature, and he is now going to fertilize nature? Is she actually representing a human woman? Is she a sacrifice to Pan? There's a whole lot of different things we can look at, and historians and archaeologists looked at it. decided that this must be the story of Pan and Hamadryad. Again, you can look that story up to research more, but now it would, again, if the comer tried to put this on display and someone said, no, we need to censor this, you would have to look at it again from that point of view. The Miller test, appeal to the period interest. In other words, will this picture sexually excite? Again, that's an individual determination. Does it patently offensive, and does it lack redeeming value? Oftentimes as we go through this, and what I know I'm going to see in the discussion board and in the quiz question answers will be, well, some of these are things I wouldn't want my children to see. Nowhere in the Miller test does it say, are we looking at family-friendly work, or is it from a parent's point of view? Remember, it is always the average person in the community. And so whether we decide that an average person in the community is a married person with young children or a single person, again, that's up to the individual finder of fact, the individual judge or the individual jury, to decide who that average person is and whether this would be offensive to them. Moving on, we see another view from Pompeii of Hermes or Mercury is portrayed as a bearded god with an enlarged phallus, wing symbol, and caduceus wand. So again, what do we have going on here? Probably this, it could represent several different things. You can look back to the history of Hermes or Mercury to see why he's being portrayed as is, the caduceus, medical, and we also see the enlarged and engorged penis, also known as priapism. And so, again, this could be seen as a warning. It could be seen as medical. A lot of different views here. But going back to the Miller test, and you're going to hear me in each of these slides saying, going back to the Miller test, we need to look at, does this sexually excite? Is it meant to sexually excite? Probably not, but again, it's an individual determination, and you can make an argument for yes it does or no it doesn't. Is it patently offensive? And does it lack redeeming value? So that's the thing we're going to be looking at each time, and you're going to be looking at some of the issues in the discussion board. Again, this is a little bit difficult to have. This is out of all of the week's discussions, this is the one where I really miss having an actual class setting, because this is something that as a class we could sit and talk about, and individually all together start saying, well, is this offensive, is it not? Why is it not? It's much harder in this asynchronous environment of online. But as you're looking through your discussion board, think back to this. Think back to the different images you see, and when you say things that are offensive or not, really bring examples to back up why you're saying this. If you say, oh, well, I would think this would be offensive, similar to why I would think the priapus would be offensive, etc., it's helpful to other people reading the discussion board to understand the point you're making.